There are different sections, as you know, different parts of the NEP devoted to different aspects of the educational continuum. And particularly relevant for school education are the two chapters, curriculum and pedagogy in schools, and teachers. These chapters 4 and 5. Now, in chapter 4, it is said that bilingual material and methodology in teaching will be implemented. So that is where the home language is not the medium of instruction. That is important to note. And because this is about empowering the home languages of learners, so that we can move away from a situation where the learner has to rote learn and can actually have an experiential approach to learning, so that the learner can bring her own or his own background, culture, etc., knowledge of and expertise in the home language into play in the educational process. There is a discussion on the multilingual aptitude of children, the cognitive benefits that follow, and this is given as a motivation, as the reason, the rationale for the need to embed multilingualism in our education, all the way from primary education to higher education. There is a mention and discussion of the three-language formula, which is to be implemented with flexibility, and the three-language formula should be set up for the states in such a way that at least 2 of the 3 languages should be native to India. That is a point which comes up, I think, once, more than once. Then there is an emphasis on high-quality bilingual textbooks and teaching learning materials for science and mathematics. These are important innovations suggested because science is one area where there is a need for a lot of change to happen, and it is felt that giving a bilingual turn to these our approach to these subjects will give a lot of dividend. As far as teachers is concerned, the teacher hiring will be based on classroom demonstration and interview. The interview process will assess proficiency in teaching in the local language. So very often it has been the case that people appointed in a certain area do not have the proficiency in the local language. And so this is an innovation which will be, I think, producing concrete results. But it does need to be taken on board that the local language will play an increasingly important role in the whole process, not just of the teaching, but in the recruitment process also. And it is important to note that teachers in private schools will also have to qualify similarly. And moving on to higher education. Now, higher education is education is a continuum, and in higher education, what happens is capacity is built in the teachers, in the future teachers. So many of our students go on to teach in schools, and so what kind of provisions we make in the higher education segment, either in the degree level or the UG level or the PG level, will have an impact on the quality of education in the school segment. So there's in terms of institutional restructuring and consolidation. So there's a suggestion to develop private and public higher education institutions offering medium of instruction in local Indian languages or bilingually. So that is an institutional level reform suggested. Then in terms of equity and inclusion in higher education, government to develop and support higher education institutions that teach in local or Indian languages as a medium of instruction, or maybe bilingually. So where in a situation where more than one language can be involved. Then all higher education institutions will develop more degree courses taught in Indian languages and bilingually. So there is a flexibility suggested or implied in the term bilingually, where in addition to the home language or the regional language, we are using either the official language Hindi or English. So I think the flexibility is something that will come in, in handy and contribute to the innovations, the implementation of the innovations. Then in the third part, there are key areas of focus, and which has a number of suggestions, where it's said that in law, education will be brought under the purview of the bilingual regime or bilingual effort to implement bilingualism in the education delivery, so that future lawyers and judges will be able to use either English, that is, in addition to English, they would be able to use the language of the state. Then promotion of Indian languages, arts and culture receives a very prominent segment in the NEP. So there is a suggestion to integrate teaching and learning of Indian languages with school and higher education at every level. So this is a kind of a rediscovery of our own richness of culture, which has for long not been reflected in our education system, which is typically oriented towards Western outlook or approaches. Specifically, there is a kind of a monolingual set of mind where there has been so far very little scope for the multilingual resources to come into play. So hopefully this will make a difference in terms of how we become more aware of our own resources, the heritage, and how much we can bring this heritage into play in the education. So dissemination of official updates of languages to their vocabularies and dictionaries. So there is a suggestion that there will be a continual updating of vocabulary, so that they are not just museum pieces lying in books and dictionaries, but the kind of expressions that are contemporarily relevant will find place in the dictionaries. That is a good sign of the dynamism that is being proposed in the NEP. Now, of course, it notes that the slow pace in producing such learning and print materials and dictionaries is a matter of concern. Language teaching too must improve, and it must be more experiential. That is, the learner's experience should form the basis for the learning, and that will allow the learner to be more spontaneous and involved in the teaching learning process in the classroom. That is the idea. The three-language formula to be implemented early to promote multilingualism. So there will be an elaborate process, which is at the moment, as I believe, going on in the different, at the center as well as in the states, to explore how the three-language formula will be implemented. Because at a time, if three languages are to be implemented, then at which level, what language will be introduced? At what point will English be introduced or should be introduced? At what point the L2 should be introduced? and whether these should be started as subjects at a particular level, or we should stagger their introduction in terms of one being the subject and the other being the medium of instruction. All these are complex matters, and these are being considered in terms of the state context offered by the linguistic scenario of the individual states. Teaching in the home or local language wherever possible is emphasized again. The inclusion of traditional Indian knowledge, including tribal and other local knowledge throughout in the curriculum, across humanities, science, arts, crafts, and sports. A fundamental guiding principle in education that is a kind of almost a policy level formulation, you can say, is to promote multilingualism and the power of language in teaching and learning. So this is a big empowerment, and the educational establishment has to change itself, reform itself suitably to embed multilingualism in the teaching and learning. Mother tongue / local language as medium of instruction in more higher education institutions and more programs in higher education. In higher education. The higher education programs may also be offered bilingually. There is a provision of flexibility again. Private higher education institutions to be incentivized to use Indian languages as mediums of instruction and or offer bilingual programs. 4-year B.Ed dual degree programs to be offered bilingually to facilitate teaching mathematics, science, and other subjects bilingually at schools. So this is a point that will relate to language across the curriculum, or as I use the term bilingualism across the curriculum a little later in the for the 8th scheduled languages, academies will be established, and the scholars and native speakers of these languages, of these academies, to determine simple yet accurate vocabulary for the latest concepts and to release the latest dictionaries. Here are some of the points that continue the previous points of including languages and how they will be disseminated. I would like to just leave it for a little bit so that you can quickly glance through the points. I should probably mention that the preservation of the more vulnerable languages and marginalized languages which are facing either endangerment or death is a matter of concern, and so the steps suggested here to prepare dictionaries of various kinds for various users is an attempt to dynamicize the use of these languages as a way of not only ensuring that they survive, but that they also flourish and be functionally relevant to the communities using them. So preservation of endangered languages and all Indian languages and their associated rich local arts and culture. The same platform will contain videos, dictionaries, and recordings of people, especially elders, who carry with them memories of the community, and those past memories will vanish once these people die. So it's very important to do field work and collect the heritage material from those communities so that they can be a part of the educational setup. And as you can see, the various resources will focus on the activities of the community, like so who speak the language by, storytelling, poetry recitation, performance plays, and folk songs and dances. Proficiency in Indian languages to be a part of qualification parameters for employment opportunities. This is